In the early hours before dawn, high up in the semi-arid country of southern Oregon, a BNSF train slumbers at a yard in Klamath Falls. By the time the morning sun peers over the horizon, the train will be clicking along jointed rail, taking it deep into Northern California's remote hills and valleys. This is a lonely stretch of track, carved out of the wilderness by two separate railroads, the Great Northern and Western Pacific. Today, the entire 203 miles of main line belong to the Burlington Northern Santa Fe and are known as the Gateway Sub. Join 7 Idea Productions as we take you on a tour of BNSF Railway's Gateway Subdivision, starting at Klamath Falls, Oregon, and continuing to the famous Keddie Wye in the Feather River Canyon. Along the way, you will see trains pass numerous grain elevators, pound the diamonds at Stronghold, endure icy winter conditions at Lookout, climb a 2.2% mountain grade above Greenville, and much more. Plus, see what happens when an underpowered train nearly stalls climbing out of the Feather River Canyon. Join us now for BNSF Railway's Gateway Sub, Klamath Falls to the famous Keddie Wye. The Gateway Sub stretches through southern Oregon and northern California, carrying inside gateway traffic between Klamath Falls and Keddie. Only the first 25 miles are located in Oregon. The Great Northern laid 91 miles of track south from Klamath Falls to Bieber, California. The last 112 miles were completed by the Western Pacific, building north from Keddie in the Feather River Canyon. The two railroads met at Bieber in November of 1931. Arthur Curtis James, owner of the Western Pacific and influential board member of the Great Northern, drove the Golden Spike himself on a day much similar to this one. It wasn't long until the first revenue train ran over the new line. The Gateway Sub begins at Bieber Line Junction, milepost 0.0. Here, BNSF connects to the Union Pacific near Texham, at the south end of UP's Klamath Falls Yard. A Vancouver, Washington to Riverbank, California train meets Amtrak's Coast Starlight at Texham. The northbound number 14 is scheduled to arrive in Klamath Falls around 8:30 a.m. on its trip between Los Angeles and Seattle. With Amtrak in the clear, the southbound BNSF makes its way to the switch at Bieber Line Junction, with downtown Klamath Falls for a backdrop. Today's HVAWRRB consists of 35 loads and 24 empties. It is 3,717 feet in length and weighs in at 5,325 tons. A Klamath Falls crew has brought this train south from Bend, Oregon, a distance of around 140 miles. BNSF runs 2 crew pools out of Klamath Falls, the North Pool to Bend and the South Pool to Keddie. Upon arriving at the yard, hostlers will service the 3 engines and add a 4th to the point before the train continues south. Part of BNSF's Northwest Division, the line primarily sees box traffic heading north and south along the inside gateway. Mixed manifest trains like this one originate from the north in Everett, Vancouver, or Pasco, Washington, and from the south in Barstow, Riverbank, Stockton, and Oakland, California. A few trains originate or terminate here. Aside from mixed manifests, bare table trains make an occasional appearance on the inside gateway. BNSF runs a local train during the week, handling loads of lumber, fertilizer, grain, and pumice from various points along the Gateway sub. Power for today's South Local have been serviced and are making their way through the yard to couple onto their train. A pair of former Burlington Northern SD40-2s in Cascade green is a rarity these days. Soon they'll either be retired or rebuilt and repainted, so enjoy these scenes while you can. BNSF 2878 is a GP39M built around 1989. It is equipped for remote control switching, a practice which is used here in Klamath Falls. Today, the 2878 is mated to the 1573, which at first glance looks like an SD45-2. This is actually an SD40-2R, and most likely no longer has a 20-cylinder prime mover under its massive hood. We watch as the pair shuffle tank cars around the yard. BNSF 2959, a GP39-2, also remote equipped and still wearing Santa Fe colors, gets into the switching action. We note the engine is being operated conventionally from the engineer's seat. At the south end of the yard, BNSF 7455 is on the point of the HPAS BAR, a Pasco, Washington to Barstow, California freight, awaiting arrested crew. Completing today's 203-mile run up the Gateway sub is its counterpart, the HBAR PAS, bringing in 4 loads and 53 empties. The train is a light one today at only 2,789 tons. The waiting 7455 idles to the pulse of a GE air compressor, ensuring the train's brake line is properly charged. Repositioning our camera just south of town, we catch the Vancouver to Riverbank train we saw earlier entering the yard. A fourth unit has been added to the point to ensure the train has enough power for the grades it'll encounter between Bieber and Keddie on the former Western Pacific High Line. The crossing gates are activated as the train slowly approaches Highway 140. Henley is milepost 4.2 on the Gateway Sub, and the site of one of many grain elevators found on the northern portion of the line. Track speed is now 49 miles per hour, and we listen to the rhythm of a southbound pounding the jointed rail. Between Klamath Falls and Merrill, farms and ranches make up the scenery in what is known as the Klamath Basin. An alfalfa field extends before us as a blanket of fog hides the main line from view on this cool October morning. In the distance, California's Mount Shasta basks in the autumn sunrise. NSS Merrill stands for the North Siding Switch of Merrill, the first siding after leaving Klamath Falls, milepost 15.4. At only 2,400 feet in length, this is not usually used to make meets. However, a cut of center beams are currently calling the spur track home as they await a stronger lumber market. A curve just north of town gives us another chance to view the Vancouver to Riverbank train. This is dark territory, meaning there are no signals governing train movements. Instead, trains run via Track Warrant Control. This train has a track warrant issued by the Gateway sub-dispatcher to the south siding switch of Mammoth, about 30 miles away. It will wait there for 2 northbound trains before continuing south to Bieber. Farther south, between Merrill and Malin, near a place called Stonebridge, we find a pair of SD40-2s on the point of the South Local returning to Klamath Falls on a late winter afternoon. Malin is the last station in Oregon, just north of the California border. Grain elevators belonging to Wynema Elevators Incorporated handle wheat, barley, oats, and rye, as well as beet pulp, flaxseed, and other commodities. Grain comes in from local farms and goes out by rail. Cars can be loaded and unloaded at this facility, which has a capacity of 360,000 bushels. The covered hoppers spotted here are loaded with feed, brought in for local dairies. The elevators make a nice backdrop for a northbound train as it enters Oregon and rounds the curve at Malin in the late afternoon. Just north of Stronghold, an abandoned farmhouse serves as a place for storing sprinkler pipe, not far from the main line. Looking south, a Barstow to Pasco train approaches the Highway 139 crossing. This area is actually lake bottom of what was once Tule Lake, a shallow marsh straddling the Oregon-California border. It was drained in the early 1900s and converted to farmland. The soft soil shakes like jello when a train passes by. As the train approaches the Oregon border at Malin, we move south to Stronghold. Milepost 31.6 marks Stronghold and the location of a diamond where the BNSF crosses over the former Southern Pacific MODOC line. It once ran between Klamath Falls and Fernley, Nevada. Under Union Pacific ownership, the line is still intact as far as Alturas, providing it with a local rail link as well as Lakeview, Oregon. Between November 2005 and May of 2009, the line was operated by the now defunct MODOC Northern. Here is a rare look at that railroad as SD9 number 651 leads an eastbound train between Malone and Hatfield in March of 2009. Returning to Stronghold, a southbound BNSF pounds the diamond. Stronghold is a location of a 2,250-foot siding, as well as another grain elevator for handling wheat, barley, oats, and rye. More center beams are being stored here as the South Local returns north with 9 cars. Work trains often draw interesting power and rolling stock. Today, a northbound rock train sports a pair of war bonnets and comes complete with an XBN caboose. A southbound heads into the gathering darkness at Stronghold. On another day, a southbound rounds a curve as it approaches Hannchen. At this location, the railroad passes Petroglyph Point, part of the Lava Beds National Monument. The train continues southward, climbing a short 0.8% grade near the siding of Mammoth. Hannchen is milepost 36.3. It is the site of more grain elevators belonging to the Newell Grain Growers Association, handling various types of wheat, barley, and oats. The grain, which is grown locally, is stored in these elevators and then shipped to market by rail. The spur track in the foreground can handle up to 8 cars. West of this location is the Tule Lake National Wildlife Refuge, a 39,000-acre preserve operated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The railroad skirts the east end of the refuge near a lava flow. With California's Mount Shasta looking on in the distance, a track inspector passes a remote grade crossing. The southbound local leads a string of empty cars past Hannchen. The ex-Burlington Northern SD40-2 and SD60M remind us of this rail line's not-too-distant past. Just to the south at milepost 37, a grain truck emerges from another elevator belonging to the Newell Grain Growers Association. Built in the 1940s, the elevator is currently utilized as a storage facility for organic barley, which is grown near Tule Lake. Today, this truck is busy hauling the barley to Hannchen, where it'll be transferred to a bigger truck and shipped south. Our attention turns back to the rails as a headlight appears in the distance. This time we are treated to what looks like a cab hop, something not seen much these days on a mainline railroad. It is the 1st of December, and this train is on its way to Westwood to prepare a Jordan spreader stowed there for the coming winter. Seasons change rapidly in a land where the elevation is over 4,000 feet. Fall is giving way to winter. Shorter and colder days lie ahead, but regardless of the weather or the season, trains keep rolling over the Gateway Sub. Just south of the siding at Mammoth, a Pasco to Barstow train with 5 GE-9s running 3x2 passes a rural grade crossing as it approaches Tionesta. This is what 22,000 horsepower sounds like on a cold winter's day. Tionesta is milepost 50.7. It is a location of Glass Mountain Pumice, a company that produces lightweight aggregate from volcanic rock mined near here. It has been in operation since 1977 and is currently serviced by the South Local. An approaching northbound passes over a nearby defect detector on this chilly February morning.
BNSF detector, milepost 50.3, no defects. Repeat, no defects. Total axles 322, temperature 25, detector out.
South of Tionesta, the arid high desert country gives way to stands of ponderosa and lodgepole pine as the railroad enters the Modoc National Forest. A southbound rolls between the sidings of Kephart and Scarface. BNSF 8245, the lead DP unit, is an EMD SD75M built in 1995. These engines are not typically found on the inside gateway. What's even more atypical is approaching us just north of Lookout. Another EMD SD75M dressed in Santa Fe war bonnet colors. Milepost 78.3 is a significant location on the Gateway Sub. It was here that the McLeod River Railroad once interchanged cars of Sierra Pacific lumber with BNSF. An old line-side building stands up to the cold near a balloon track once used by the McLeod. The balloon is still intact and used occasionally for storing maintenance of way equipment. However, the rails were removed from the 34-mile stretch to Hambone when rail service to Lookout ended in December of 2003. And now, the McLeod River Railroad is only a memory. BNSF still uses the 6,820-foot siding to make meets, but not today, as the northbound south local has the highball. The following day, we again catch the local on its way south between Lookout and Bieber, kicking up the winter snow. South of Lookout, the line crosses from Modoc to Lassen County as it makes its way through Big Valley. We again catch the local after picking up several cars at Bieber. Winter storms have dressed Big Valley in white as train HPAS-BAR rounds a curve just north of Bieber with a train of covered hoppers, tanks, and boxcars. We have arrived at Station Bieber, milepost 90.0. Actually, this is the community of New Bieber. The town of Bieber is about 2 miles northeast of here. A water tower built by the Great Northern remains, but many of the buildings, including the old GN depot, are long gone. Bieber is a location of an 8,024-foot siding, the longest on the Gateway Subdivision. Set up near a maintenance depot, we catch a northbound Barstow to Pasco train. Bieber is where Western Pacific met the Great Northern in 1931. Northbound WP trains were handed over to the GN, and vice versa, a practice that continued into the 1990s with Burlington Northern and Union Pacific. And now, trains roll straight through. The South Local is the only train that stops here on a regular basis, picking up lumber trucked here from Boerne and dropping off fertilizer for MacArthur Farm Supply. Here, fertilizer is transferred to trucks. Turning the clock ahead about 6 months, the South Local switches Bieber on its northbound run to Klamath Falls. The 6814 and 7034 were regular power for this job in 2009. An evening thunderstorm gives us some brilliant colors to work with as we catch the local going about the mundane task of switching cars. At one point, we spoke with the train's conductor, an old head who was nearing retirement. He told us he'd rather be fishing. Yeah, pesky knuckle, let's try that again. Okay, stretch him. Nope, pin didn't drop. Give us a little nudge here. Good hook. That'll do, 6814. Yeah, just like on your model railroad, sometimes it can take a few tries to get a joint. twilight is fading as the crew of the South Local wraps up their chores and prepares to head north for Klamath Falls. Hopefully it's a straight shot back to the yard, unless the dispatcher has other plans tonight. Between Bieber and the crossing of the Pitt River, BNSF 4093 takes a manifest south through Big Valley. Two diesels add additional horsepower to the rear of the train. Gevo number 7254 in its first year of revenue service, sporting BNSF's new swoosh logo, and Dash 9 number 4552. We continue south over a section of track the Western Pacific referred to as the Northern California Extension. It was also known as the High Line. The easy running trains have experienced thus far is over. Mountain grades lie ahead. Continuing south to the Pitt River Bridge near milepost 94.5, the track speed is reduced from 49 to 25 as a 1.5% grade takes trains above the Pitt River Canyon. A track inspector high rails across the bridge a few miles ahead of an IH train, a train carrying materials that pose an inhalation hazard. The inspector is required in dark territory to make sure the track is clear and all switches are properly lined ahead of the train. Behind him, a southbound pass bar with a few loads of chlorine tucked into its consist crosses the bridge as the sky darkens. As the train rolls off the bridge, we hear the rumbling of distant thunderstorms. The Gateway sub-dispatcher has issued a flash flood warning due to thunderstorm activity south of here. On a winter visit to Little Valley, a southbound rounds a curve near milepost 108. Here, trains come out of a 1.6% descending grade and begin another uphill climb. Soon, the engineer will be making the transition from dynamics to throttle for the 1.67% grade to Halls Flat, 18 miles away. The slack runs out as the train begins the uphill climb. The train passes a defect detector and rolls through a cut, bringing it into the siding of Little Valley. It's a dramatic difference between winter and summer on the High Line. A northbound rolls down grade as it approaches the south switch at Little Valley, a 4,251-foot siding. Milepost 118.8 marks the former siding of Jellico. The 142-pound ribbon rail sings as 6 GEs, churning out 26,400 horsepower, lug a heavy southbound HEVE BAR around a curve on the uphill grade. The grade tapers off at the 6,758-foot siding of Halls Flat. We are now 5,704 feet above sea level. Peering through the pine and sagebrush of the Lassen National Forest, a war bonnet paint scheme catches our attention. Two GE-944CWs are tied down on a Y-track. These units are being used to power a rock train currently at Little Valley. Soon a crew arrives and prepares to take the engines down the hill to begin the day's work. Milepost 134 is Poison Lake. The marshy lake is home to sandhill cranes, geese, and ducks. The early morning stillness is broken by a northbound train clicking along a section of jointed rail, something that is disappearing fast from the Gateway Sub. At milepost 135.2, we find another dragging equipment hotbox detector. These paddles will detect any dragging equipment from the train, while the white sensors on the outside of each rail look for hot axles. An additional sensor attached to the inside of the rail retrieves the axle count. Since the detector is in a remote location, it is powered by batteries recharged by the sun and wind. A combination of solar panels and miniature windmills provide the energy it needs to function. Usually, On a day when the sun is hiding behind thunderclouds, a southbound EVE BAR approaches on another section of jointed rail. After it passes, we will hear the computer-generated report, which is radioed to the crew.
BNSF detector. Milepost 135.2. Total axles 312. Temperature 73. Integrity failure. BNSF detector. Milepost 135.2. Total axles 312. Temperature 73. Integrity failure. Detector out.
Well, things don't always work properly. That integrity failure message means the signal maintainer has some work in the near future. Returning to Winter, another southbound is seen at the same location as it heads toward Lodgepole. Next stop, Lodgepole. The 4,235-foot siding no doubt got its name from the nearby stands of pine found in the Lassen National Forest, also known as jack pine. A northbound Barstow to Vancouver train rolls by on a sunny spring day. Keep in mind that the elevation is well over a mile on the High Line. The snow on the ground is perfectly normal at this time of year. A few miles to the south, we again meet the local, returning north after picking up lumber loads from Crescent Mills and Clear Creek Junction. The train is again powered by a pair of ex-Burlington Northern SD40-2s. It is on its way to Bieber. A southbound rolls through a high mountain meadow at the same location. North of Westwood, a winter storm has left plenty of the white stuff on the ground as a southbound train approaches a grade crossing. Meet the legendary Paul Bunyan. He stands in the community of Westwood next to his good friend Babe the Big Blue Ox. The Minnesota-based Red River Lumber Company, which founded Westwood, is credited with making this mythical character an American legend. Near the BNSF main line is a Lassen County Visitor Center known as Westwood Station. Built in 2001, it looks very similar to the original depot built back in the early 1900s. It is also home to the Westwood Chamber of Commerce, who have a nice view of the main line, and a southbound MKLF BAR. The train has a track warrant to Almanor, 14 miles away. Westwood lies at the south end of the Cascade mountain range, where lava flows ran up against the much older Sierra Nevada mountains. The tree-covered hills in the distance are part of Keddie Ridge, considered to be the northernmost part of the Sierra Nevadas, which extends south into Mexico. Earlier that morning, we caught the South Local as it made a quick stop to pick up a crew member before continuing north. The train has just 4 lumber loads. The first 3 are from a Sierra Pacific mill in Quincy. The lumber is trucked to Crescent Mills, where it is transloaded onto center beams. The last load came from the Collins Pine Mill in Chester and was picked up at Clear Creek Junction. Clear Creek Junction is milepost 167.7. The 13-mile spur heading off to the right is for the Collins Pine Mill in Chester. The line used to be operated by the Almanor Railroad, but now lumber is trucked to the junction and loaded onto cars for the South Local to pick up. Train HBAR VAW takes 19 loads and 28 empties up the 1.5% grade past the junction. Lassen County gets its name from nearby Lassen Peak, a 10,462-foot volcano which last erupted between 1914 and 1917. It is the southernmost active volcano in the Cascade Range. Southeast of Lassen Peak, we catch the Clef Bar again as it rounds a curve just above Almanor. The main line passes Lake Almanor, an artificial lake formed by Canyon Dam on the North Fork of the Feather River. It was constructed by Great Western Power between 1926 and 27 and is fed by several creeks and natural springs. Almanor was named for Alice, Martha, and Eleanor, 3 daughters of Great Western's vice president. Besides creating electricity, Lake Almanor is a popular recreation destination for those who like fishing, water skiing, and camping. In the wintertime, we find enjoyment simply taking in the peaceful scenery. A southbound rolls over the North Switch at Almanor. Between Almanor and Greenville, the railroad drops 1,000 feet in elevation. Trains encounter a 2.2% grade for the next 10 miles. A 5,170-foot Beartable train climbs the grade on its way to Almanor. A heavy Everett to Barstow train with 69 cars, most of them loads, twists through the many curves as it heads down the mountain. This was the steepest grade on the entire Western Pacific. It is also the steepest part of the Gateway Subdivision. Farther down the mountain, train HBAR-VAW climbs out of Tunnel 6 at a place known as the Hollenbach Horseshoe. Tunnel 6 is the northernmost existing tunnel on the Gateway Sub. We move a few miles farther down the mountain to the Gold Strike Road crossing just outside of Greenville. Another heavy Everett to Barstow train is in dynamics as it approaches in the gathering darkness. Keddie Ridge is dressed in a fresh blanket of snow and looms high above the small community of Greenville in California's Plumas County. An old wagon sits in the weeds near milepost 189. On the BNSF timetable, Greenville is a 4,236-foot siding. A derailment in recent years tore out the south switch, which has not been replaced. It is now used occasionally for maintenance of way. Snow highlights Indian Falls Ridge near Crescent Mills, just 8 miles from Keddie. Train BOIG-TAC takes 58 empty stack wells from Oakland, California to Tacoma, Washington. The train rolls through Indian Valley on its way north. The last siding trains encounter before reaching Keddie is Moccasin. The 4,208-foot siding is mostly hidden behind a stand of trees just south of the bridge over Indian Creek. Between Greenville and Moccasin, the grade is fairly level as the southbound rolls over the bridge. The train slows for a 20-mile-per-hour speed restriction for the next remaining 6 miles to Keddie. The last few miles of the High Line were some of the most challenging to construct. A 1.5% descending grade takes trains down into the Feather River Canyon, through tunnels, over high trestles, and around several 10-degree curves. Speaking of trestles, this southbound is approaching the curved trestle at Indian Falls. It illustrates how the Western Pacific literally chiseled their High Line into the Sierra Nevada mountains. BNSF 7587 South descends toward Keddie, just below Tunnel 2. The southbound has made it to Keddie and now awaits permission to enter Union Pacific's Canyon Sub. Set up near Tunnel 32, we catch an eastbound UP stack train as it exits the bore and crosses the famous Keddie Wye, shaking the ground in the process. With the UP train now in the clear and a fresh crew on board, the BNSF gets a signal to enter CTC limits and continue westward toward Stockton. The remote-controlled DP units disappear into Tunnel 32 as the train heads west through the Feather River Canyon. Since we are on UP's Canyon Subdivision, let's head a few miles west to Virgilia. During rainy periods, Union Pacific assigns escorts called Broncos to all trains in the canyon due to the high risk of rock slides. Bronco Echo is escorting BNSF 4977 East, keeping a distance of 2 miles ahead of the train. From the top of Tunnel 32, we watch the Bronco cross on the left leg of the Y, where he will set off. The right leg continues east to Portola on the Union Pacific. When UP acquired the Western Pacific in 1983, it owned the High Line all the way to Bieber, but was required to sell it to BNSF in 1996 after absorbing the Southern Pacific. Union Pacific ownership ends just a little north of the Y. Stockton crews take BNSF trains onto the Gateway Sub and up to the crew change point at Quarry Road. This way, trains can clear the UP main line.
Welcome to BNSF 4977 East. Echo's off the track and in the clear. You guys released from escort. Have a safe trip home. Roger that, Echo. You're off the track in the clear and we are released from escort. Thank you. Have a safe day, out. Thank you, out.
Power for this train is the usual GE-944CW and an EMD SD75I belonging to Canadian National. As the train crosses the Y, the CN unit stops loading, forcing the -9 to do all the work. Upon entering the Y, the line bends in a large horseshoe curve as it begins a 1.5% climb, which is a little bit stiffer than the 1% grade through the Feather River Canyon. In the distance, the High Line's Clear Creek Trestle is visible. The combination of the grade and curvature is having its effect on the train, not to mention the extra dead weight of the CN 5766, which is now just along for the ride. While the engineer applies sand, the conductor tries to bring the second unit back online, but to no avail. It's going to be a slow climb to Quarry Road. The train crawls through Tunnel 2 and prepares to cross Clear Creek Trestle. This is quite a testament to what you can do with a -9. Closer to Quarry Road, the lone GE is on its knees, pulling the trailing tonnage up the 1.5% grade. A light rain is not helping the situation much. The last thing this crew needs is wet rails. Wheel flanges squeal in protest as the train slowly continues up the hill. The good news is the train finally reaches the crew change point. The bad news is that there will be no way for the outbound crew to get this train started again. It'll have to sit right where it is until help arrives. The help in question is in the form of an extra unit from a southbound train which had to be tied down at Almanor to make this move. The light engines head south to meet the power from the disabled train at Moccasin. The trailing engine, BNSF 5117, will be donated to the cause. With the swap made, the BNSF 4977, the dead CN 5766, and the freshly added BNSF 5117 head back down to Quarry Road to couple onto their train. A half hour later, the train is on the move, finally making track speed as it crosses the Indian Falls Trestle. The process of rescuing the stalled train took several hours. As a result, 2 train crews went dead, meaning they reached their maximum 12 hours of service required by law before completing their runs. A second southbound crew went dead at Almanor, and this train will require a dog catch crew at Tionesta. All part of railroading. Back at Keddie, milepost 202.8, a Klamath Falls crew completes its run aboard the BNSF 4178 South. It is handed over to a Stockton crew, which will take the train, now BNSF 4178 West, slowly onto the Keddie Wye, also known as the Spanish Creek Trestle. The inbound crew gives the train the roll-by before heading to Quincy for some well-deserved rest. This day's run over the Gateway Subdivision is complete. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation of today's BNSF operations in this remote and rugged piece of railroad. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.